Delving into poverty, detailing two introductory students' journey into the way we should define and measure poverty. I'm Will Corry.
I'm Lee Hamilton.
And this is our Poverty 101, project number 1.
Our definition of poverty. We believe poverty should be defined as whether or not a person is able to provide the basic necessities of life for themselves or their family unit as defined by the Supplemental Poverty Measurement. We define these basic necessities as food, clothing, shelter, and utilities, just as the Supplemental Poverty Measurement does its threshold calculations off of. Where we go further is that we think that the certain capabilities of life, bodily health, and bodily integrity are also basic necessities of life. The capability of life, according to Martha Nussbaum, is being able to live to the end of a human life of normal length, not dying prematurely or before one's life is so reduced as to be not worth living. Bodily health, as described by Martha Nussbaum, is being able to have good health, including good reproductive health, and to be adequately nourished and to have adequate shelter. Bodily integrity, as described by Nussbaum, is being able to move freely from place to place, to be secure against violent assault, including sexual assault and domestic violence, having opportunities for sexual satisfaction, and for choice in matters of reproduction. We would use the SPM as our base measurement with a few additions for establishing the threshold calculation. This would consist of 1/3 of the median FCSU expenditures plus the nominal amount, which is around 0.2%, adjusted by geographical regions set forth by the U.S. Census Bureau. We would take into account life expectancy, infant mortality rates, and rates of sexual and domestic violence for each geographical region. These proxy measures act as a way of quantifying the capabilities that we deem as basic necessities for life. There would be established threshold levels adjusted for each geographical region to determine acceptable figures for each one. Capabilities are incorporated as thresholds, but not included in our way of figuring resource units or resource measurements. Resource units will stay consistent with the SPM. The official family unit as defined by the SPM is official family definition plus any co-resident, unrelated children, foster children, and unmarried partners and their relatives, or unrelated individuals who are not otherwise included in the family definition. Our resource measurement will stay consistent with SPM as well, which is the sum of cash income plus non-cash benefits that resource units can use to meet their FCSU needs, minus taxes or plus tax credits, minus work expenses, out-of-pocket medical expenses, and child support paid to another household.
So part of our approach to how we define and measure poverty deals with capabilities and functionings. Functionings can be described as being and doing. They can vary from being healthy, having a job, and various other things people do in order to live. Capabilities are the alternative combinations of functionings that are feasible for a person to achieve. Ultimately, capabilities denote a person's opportunity and ability to generate valuable outcomes, taking into account relevant personal characteristics and external factors. We chose to utilize the first 3 of Nussbaum's essential capabilities because we felt those most important to define poverty. That is, the access to life, health, and being able to live a normal life. We felt others, such as play, other species, and affiliation, were definitely aspects of a good life, but should not count towards the measurement of poverty itself.
Yeah, we saw those as life enhancers, not necessarily things that we deem as necessities for life.
So the other big measurement of poverty that the Census Bureau uses that we decided not to use is the OPM. So the OPM is the official poverty measure. And it measures poverty by comparing a family unit, which are blood or marriage relatives living within the household. It measures their level of income, which is cash income, which includes income earned from one's job, investments, rental properties, Social Security checks, or TANF, which is temporary assistance for needy families. It creates a poverty threshold, which is the cash value of the economy of food plan, which is determined by government economists, multiplied by 3. So the OPM takes that level of income per household and compares it to the poverty threshold, which is defined by the cash value of the economy of food plan. Any household income that is under that, adjusted for family size, would be a household considered to be in poverty. And the OPM is an absolute measure of poverty. in that the determination of whether a person is poor or not is not sensitive to what other people around them have.
As compared to the SPM, which is a quasi-relative measure of poverty, because there are parts of it that compare it to the level of income or level of the people around them through the median expenditures, but there are also absolute parts of it that make it quasi-relative.
So there are a couple of problems with the OPM that we saw as we looked to define and measure poverty based on what we saw. So the problems with the OPM that we've outlined are one, that it measures by family units without taking into account foster children, non-blood relatives, and irregular households that can be common in some geographic regions. Within that, too, it also does not take into account differences in geographical region. Households and living situations in the southeast of the United States are far different than the Northwest, the Northeast, or the Midwest. So it's really hard. It's like comparing apples and oranges in a sense, since the OPM just compares everyone, or does not compare everyone together, but it takes into the country as a whole without breaking it up into regions that are similar socially, economically, and culturally. Further, it does not take into account in-kind benefits such as housing assistance, food stamps, SNAP, and government-provided child care. Further, the OPM is strictly just measured based on income. And the Census Bureau itself actually states that the official poverty measure should be interpreted as a statistical yardstick rather than as a complete description of what people and families need to live. Finally, the OPM is often too low. Families can have incomes above the federal poverty measure and yet lack sufficient resources to adequately meet their basic needs. So another part of measuring poverty that we discussed in class, that we hit on a little bit in our definition and measurement, but we didn't feel was significant enough to be a cornerstone of our measurement, is the Human Development Index, or HDI. The HDI was created to emphasize that people and their capabilities should be the ultimate criteria for assessing the development of a country, not economic growth alone. In our measurement of poverty, we utilize the Life Expectancy Index as a measure of life capabilities, but we did not utilize the HDI as a whole because we believed it lacked a fully encompassing view and measurement of poverty. The HDI does not reflect inequalities, poverty itself, human security, or empowerment. While we believe that there are elements within the HDI that are important, it did not adequately measure poverty as we have defined it.
Yes, the HDI was an influence for us for the use of proxy measures that we use to determine thresholds for our official definition of poverty. And, in concluding our thoughts, over the first few weeks of class, we were introduced to a wide varieties of definitions and measurements of poverty. While our definition of poverty and the measurement techniques we use might not be perfect, we described what poverty meant to us. We understand the inherent challenges of getting proxy measures for the large amount of geographical regions that are set forth by the Census Bureau, but as we talked about in class, sometimes the best ways to measure poverty might not be the easiest to accomplish. Poverty is to us whether or not a person is able to provide the basic necessities of life for themselves or their family unit as defined by the SPM's definition.
Thank you.